And we are live. Welcome to the Concealed Carry Podcast, Season 10, Episode 19. Welcome to the Concealed Carry Podcast, part of the concealedcarry.com network of podcasts brought to you by HK. Today is Thursday, November 8th, 2024. I'm your host, Jacob Paulson. I am joined today by Brian Doc McLaughlin. Don't forget to follow us on all the social medias so you're up to date with the latest goodness, this stuff from us and stuff. Yeah. We're excited to be here today. I'm excited about this topic, Brian, and it's your brainchild, if I'm not mistaken. And it sounds pretty cool.
Yes, well, it is coming straight out of this brain, so we'll see how cool it is. But today's topic was going to be a little bit about how to get a little bit better at shooting, how to be a better gunfighter, and some tips and tricks on how you might do that if you're a new shooter and you're starting off on your journey. Here's some basic philosophies about how we can kind of get the ball rolling to get you your ambitions procured.
Yeah, I dig. First, a word from our sponsors. Today's first sponsor message is from HK. It's a big deal right now, Heckler and Koch, because HK USA just released the first US-made HK gun, which by itself would be pretty cool. But it's even extra cool because the gun itself is so epic. I have held it in my hands. I do not own one yet, but it's the new CC9 from HK looks amazing. This is a, kind of falling into that class of micro compact guns that has good ammo capacity. It's chambered in 9mm, and everybody I know who's put some rounds through it loves it. Riley has one. I saw some initial video from him when he went to the range with it for the first time. Looks really solid. Of course, everything Riley shoots he makes look good. Don't tell Riley I said that. So anyway, if you haven't already, got yourself an HK, maybe now's the time to get the new HK CC9. Go check it out.
It seems like a similar size to maybe the SIG 365.
Yeah, I'd say 365 Shield Plus range. It's that what do we call them? Hybrid stack. It's like 1.5 stack mag. So you're getting a little bit better capacity than you did with the old school micro compact guns. The Glock 43s of the world, the Shields of the world. But you're still getting an ultra concealable firearm. So yeah, I love it. And the durability testing they did on this thing is frankly unbelievable. Like, I encourage you to go to HK's website, hkusa.com, and watch some of the videos, and you'll be like, oh dang. Like, you'll understand immediately what makes an HK an HK when you understand what they go through to test these guns. This gun's been in development and testing for almost a decade. Like, frankly, like it's like something like 8 years. So they do not mess around when they design guns and they make guns. It's amazing. And their ability to kind of scale and produce it at a good price is going to be better, I think, than historically HK has been able to do, because they were importing all the guns. They were all made in Germany, right? So now you have guns being made in Georgia, including this new CC9. It is awesome. Like, if you're looking for a new good subcompact gun, go check that sucker out. And I will hold our other sponsor message for later in the episode. So this concept, Brian, that we are talking about here, this idea of becoming a better defender, a better gunfighter. You said, that you kind of had new shooters in mind when you came up with this, but this is not limited to new shooters. This is true for all of us. And it's an interesting kind of cyclical thing. Cyclical, maybe the wrong word. Maybe I'm going to confuse people. It's true that we all kind of have to go through these steps as we scale, as we grow, and we have to kind of repeat them all the time as our capacity and our understanding increases. So wherever you're at in your journey, I think this is going to be a relevant topic.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I always kind of struggled with the most in my journey through training was where do you start at? Pretty frequently I felt like I was kind of thrown in the deep end and learning kind of in reverse sometimes, and having a good base to start off from helps a lot. But this could also apply to you as an experienced shooter. This type of philosophy, can help you to kind of key in on those basics and more essential things much more efficiently and more effectively, I think.
Yeah. We did an episode, Bazoom, many moons ago, years ago, that was called, I think the title of the episode was called Learning, Training, Practice. And in that episode, we talked about this idea of, what's the difference between learning, training, and practice. Like we were really trying to kind of define those terms and talk about how all of them were relevant and important to your journey and your growth as a shooter. And that this episode kind of reminds me of that a little bit, except for instead of being kind of almost like high level theoretic, I feel like today we're going to be a little bit more practical, a little bit more specific about things that you can do to grow and improve. So I like that. Now you have 5 things on this list. Thus the name of the episode, the top 5 things, 5 actionable steps to become a better gunfighter. I was looking at these and I was thinking to myself, I don't know that the order matters, but maybe you felt strongly about the order. So, let's get into it.
Okay. Well, I would say the first one on the list is going to be gear procurement. And this is going to be first on the list because you need to start off with something that's adequate. Now, I think it's extremely important. Of course, everyone is going to know that gear is not what makes you a good shooter or a good gunfighter, but it certainly helps. You don't need to have the most Gucci race gun that's out there, but if you have something that's quality that's going to work for you, then that will mean that you're going to be able to train much more effectively and efficiently. If your gun is not a quality weapon, and it breaks when you go to the range or you go on a training trip, you're going to lose out on all that training that you could have done. So having something that's adequate, it doesn't have to be top of the line, but something that's adequate for what you're doing is going to be important. And if you start off with that, that's going to help quite a bit. So that's going to be your gear procurement.
Yeah. And it's an interesting thing too, because I think there's some sense of, well, when you don't know anything, then you don't really know what gear to buy. And as you grow as a shooter, you constantly refine your own standards, desires, needs, and understanding of what gear is good or best for you. So it's also kind of this thing you're constantly circling back to and saying, okay, well, what about now? Now that I know what I know, what is the gear I want? I was thinking about this. This is going to be my first of as many shameless plugs as I can fit into this episode for our 21-day challenge, which is upcoming. For those who aren't aware, you need to go check it out. 21 concealedcarry.com/challenge will get you to it. But this is a 21-day guided virtual training program that we're putting on here at concealedcarry.com. It doesn't start till December 1st, but you need to go sign up now so you can get in there. And here in a minute, I'll give you a discount that's exclusive for podcast listeners, by the way. But anyway, we were talking about this, and this 21-day challenge is going to be cool because we're going to be sending out a daily exercise or exercises to everybody in the challenge. Like, hey, here's what you do today, kind of thing to participate in the challenge. And it's really cool. It's like it's all gamified, so people can confirm when they've completed their daily exercises and they get points and all this stuff. But we were talking about this as we were getting ready for it, and I was like, Riley, if obviously we can take people's dry fire to the next level if they have certain tools, certain gear, right? In dry fire, like having a cool fire trainer, for example, which is epic, cool, awesome gear, really can take your dry fire to the next level, but it's expensive. Well, relatively. I mean, it's not cheap. It's not $10 product. Dry fire mags, especially the new cool smart dry fire mags, really awesome kit. Having a laser dot even, or a next level training cert pistol, like those are things that can elevate your dry fire, but you can still get a lot done with none of those things. You can still get a lot of extra training. And so there's this sense in my mind, and I'm using this dry fire example to try and prove a bigger point about gear procurement. And that is that when you're getting started, maybe all you need is the gun, in dry fire. And you can get a lot done. You can get a lot of skills, and just over time, you start to understand, like, well, I would like to have this other piece of gear to elevate what I'm doing here. And so I think that's true here as well, just broadly speaking, not just about dry fire, but about all of my gear that makes me a better defender. Is it's sort of this cyclical, like, start somewhere and then you slowly refine and grow as you go.
Yeah, I think that could also transfer into what kind of gear will help me to train more effectively. It's not just the holster and the pistol. Like I think one of my favorite dry fire practice training tools is the dummy ammunition.
Mm,
You can do so much stuff with that, as well as learn your trigger and your sight alignment. I love to work on my reloads from different positions, and having those good dummy rounds. I think that's one of the essential things that I have for my dry fire practice. I've used a lot of the LASR and Mantis. Those are fantastic
mm.
and great options. But you definitely can't beat that dummy ammo for being effective and fairly inexpensive.
Yeah, yeah, sub $15. Yeah. So I think yeah, gear matters. Better gear helps you be a better gunfighter. There's no question. It doesn't take the place of skill and knowledge and education and the other things we're going to talk about today.
Hmm.
But I think we have to acknowledge that there are advantages that come from having good gear. I was the other thing I always think about when I think about gear, because you know you'll hear people in our community in our industry say things like, "Well, you know, gear means nothing. Like it's all about knowledge." And I'm like, if that were true, man, like some of our wartime fights would be have very different outcomes. You're a veteran. We're coming up on Veterans Day, by the way. So you know, thank you for your service, and you're welcome for paying my taxes. But I like to think like sorry, just a little inside joke for me. But I'd like to think that your experience in combat for, on behalf of our country would have been very different if you didn't outclass the enemy in terms of the gear we had.
This is true. Yeah, we had the latest and the greatest. Well, I mean, I was with the Marine Corps, so we had the fifth latest and greatest. The Army had all the latest and greatest. But yeah, we definitely outclassed our opponents, which is a huge deal, you know. And if you've got the better gear, and you're not running a rusty snub nose revolver with, you know, odd ammunition in it, then you're probably going to do better than the bad guy.
Yeah, yeah. So I think while it may not be the most important thing, we can't neglect quality gear. And I also think that the higher the skills and knowledge you gain, the more advantage you get from higher quality gear. Like it
Mm,
becomes it gives you a bigger leg up than someone who's newer. In other words, I think if we went and grabbed a brand new shooter today and gave them a high point or the new HKCC9, which you know for or just I'm just trying to make some examples of like a really low cost, low economy, less reputable firearm and what I
right.
perceive to be like the top of the line right now. It would not make a big difference for the brand new shooter. They probably be comparably skilled with both. But a more skilled shooter is going to be able to take advantage of the advantage of better gear. So there's that to consider as well.
Well, I see a lot of people that just they blow a lot of money on their first gun, you know, and I can understand that. I get that. You know, you want to have the best tool, especially when you're in a dangerous fight. But also, you know, don't forget that you could also spend that money on, you know, more training. I kind of think about it sometimes a little bit like in the form of like a race gun is kind of like a race car. You know, like if you're brand new at driving, you know, driving that race car probably isn't going to be that great for you. And in fact, it could be a little bit dangerous, especially with some of these race guns are kind of like race cars. Race cars are really fast. Race guns are really fast. If you don't know how to control that trigger right, you know, and the gun goes off when you're not expecting it to, that could be a pretty dangerous situation. So I think if you know if you're a new shooter and you're looking to purchase your first new gun, having something that's a little bit middle of the road. High point is a little on the too low end, I would think, but something that's kind of where in the middle, you know, like Glock or M&P or the new HK. That CC9 is an excellent option, you know, where it's middle of the road. It's not super Gucci, but it's going to work for you when you need it to, and it's not going to break your bank. And then you can take that money that you saved and put that into some training on how to actually drive your weapon.
Yeah, yeah. And when we talk about gear, we're not just talking about the gun. I think that there's so many elements of gear in the self-defense community. A minute ago, I was talking about things that elevate our dry fire practice. There's also things that elevate our live fire practice. There's
Yeah.
also things that just make it more enjoyable to practice and train. Like having a decent range bag, frankly, goes a long way. We've talked on this podcast about medical gear. We've talked on this podcast about upgraded sights. We've talked about holsters. We've talked about clothing. Good belts, apparel that helps you to conceal the gun. So all that, I just want to make sure that we're being clear that gear procurement is a whole thing, not just about a gun.
Yeah. And that
All
kind
right,
of
what
leads us
else?
into the next one, which is education, because as you become more educated on your gear, as you learn more, especially when you go to the range, that's where you're going to have a chance to really kind of test this gear out. Sometimes you'll buy a new cool widget and you'll think it'll be awesome, but then when you come to step two, which is education, then you start to take it out onto the range or you start to play around with it and you realize, oh, this particular item isn't very good because of these particular reasons. Or maybe that's a good piece of kit. Maybe that's a good piece of gear that everybody or a lot of people use. It just doesn't work for your particular situation or your particular style. So I think as you get into step number two, which is education, you're going to figure out your gear selection more efficiently. But then on top of that, you are going to be learning. And this is where you are going to learn how to become a better defender from everybody around you. Well, I mean, you're going to learn from instructors, but then you also have a ton of resources online from that you can use, like on YouTube or a lot of the video libraries, like what we have on
Yeah.
concealedcarry.com.
Yeah, I think education is kind of a broad stroke term, and you can take that lots of directions. You have, what I would call formal training. Formal training is where you're getting relatively direct instruction from a instructor, somebody who knows more than you. Sometimes there's informal training where it's a buddy who goes to the range with me and he helps me through some things. That's fine too. But you have this training concept, and then you have things that are less formal, like you said, use the word learning, which I really like. Listening to this podcast right now is learning.
Mm-hmm.
That's part of that journey. Having a couple of YouTube channels that you're subscribed to, or magazines that you're subscribed to that you read, or blogs that you subscribe to that you pay attention to. All that goes, I think, a long way into that overall education thing. Education can be expensive and it can be free at the same time, right? Like it just depends on what education we're talking about, where you're getting it from, and it can also be convenient or highly inconvenient too. So I think that matters.
Yeah, and I think you need to have a combination of self-education and then formal education. Self-education would be more along the lines of, watching YouTube videos and practicing on your own, kind of a thing. And you got to be kind of careful with that because you could learn the wrong thing for the wrong situation. That's why it's important to be able to go and take a class from an instructor in person so that you have an option to kind of bounce these ideas off of that person, um, so that you've got someone who's experienced that can tell you whether or not what you're doing is actually working correctly. I know having a friend to go with me or like a coach, to kind of like watch how I shoot and that kind of thing and kind of give me tips and tricks like, hey, looks like you're jerking the trigger a little bit, or it doesn't look like you're high enough up in the grip, or whatever the case is. Having somebody on the outside that can look at those things is pretty beneficial. But at the same time, if you have an instructor that you can go and learn from who can take a couple of extra moments with you and say, hey, you're doing good in these areas, but you need to fix these small areas to improve your shooting status. And I think that's an important part of that education, so that you can have not only your self-education that you're learning on your own, which is important because you'll learn more that way. You'll do it on your own time and it's cheaper. But then at the same time, you'll have the chance to go and actually test what you've self-taught yourself in a class with an experienced instructor. And there's sometimes, I know I've been around a lot of ranges with instructors and I hear about all the things that go on. And there's a lot of weird theories out there. If you've got a theory like, hey, I think that a gunfight would progress in this way because of the things that I've learned, you get a chance to go out and talk to an instructor about that. You might learn about a better and more effective way for handling it. So, yeah, I think change it up a little bit, educate yourself, but also seek other people to bounce those ideas off. Make sure that you're in the right category.
Yeah, this is about balance because if you're listening to this, we have to presume that you don't do this for a living, that you have like a life, you have a family, you have a job, you have all these things going on. And so you can't indefinitely be in classes and training and things like that. This is another shameless plug, by the way, for our upcoming 21-day challenge, because I think that the whole point of the 21-day challenge is that in 10 minutes or less a day for 21 days in a row, not for your whole life, some beastly commitment, just for 3 weeks, 10 minutes a day, if you have the right guidance and direction, you can make huge inroads in your skills and your abilities by getting good training. And so now that's something we're doing there, and it includes live components as well as other components. So check that out at concealedcarry.com/challenge. And by the way, exclusive discount for podcast listeners. It's not significant, but you can save some money by using the coupon code podcast21, all one word, podcast21, and that'll save you a couple bucks when you sign up. Guardian Nation members save 50% on the 21-day challenge. But anyway, for whatever that's worth, I think that education matters, whether that's formal, whether we're just learning, we're listening to a podcast while we're driving down the road, or whatever it is. I think having a kind of routine relative to how you're going to get some additional education goes a long way. Oh, every year I take a class at my local gun range, or every year I go to the Guardian conference. Every week I listen to the Concealed Carry podcast. Every time XYZ YouTube channel publishes a video, I watch it. Maybe active self-protection. Be able to see surveillance videos of gunfights and hear that analysis. That doesn't take very long on a daily basis. Whatever it is, like whatever your routine is. And I also have my routine, right? Like Brian has his routine. I think it's important to kind of have a system in place for your education. And that is the thing you can refine over time. Just like we talked about gear, something you refine over time. I think when we talk about education, it's about saying, okay, I'm going to commit to certain things. I'm going to commit to go to the range once a month, or I'm going to commit to go, doing dry fire twice a week or 3 times a week or every day or whatever, whatever's in alignment with your goals or objectives. I think that's what matters here.
Absolutely.
And maybe that takes us to the next one.
Yes, dry fire practice. I think this is something that it's becoming a lot more popular. When I first started getting into the gun community, it wasn't nearly as popular. And I know that once I started to implement it into my daily routine, I went from being a very novice shooter to being very very proficient pretty rapidly. A lot of because like all day, every day, if I wasn't doing something, I would have I really love those simunition guns because I can have one on my desk or something like that, or if I'm watching TV or something like that, I could just kind of work on my reloads and work at finding that magazine into the magazine well without looking. And it's just kind of like almost like a fidget toy. And I imagine that could be kind of dangerous. I could imagine Riley, if Riley was on the podcast right now, he'd have something to say maybe about worried about training scars or something like that, because you want to make sure that you're learning the correct technique and you're performing those well. But I think if you're going to get into shooting and you're trying to carry a weapon for self-defense, it's essential for you to do your dry fire practice. Any level of shooting is going to benefit from dry fire practice. I know that snipers will work on their trigger control, quite a bit in that and how that they shoot. So it doesn't matter what you're doing as you work on your repetitive muscle memory. I think that's what's going to help you to come out on top and learn how to fight without thinking about it as much as somebody else might.
Yeah. Yes. Like this, dry fire practice is listed here, and the next one that we're going to talk about is, to me, kind of interconnected to this, because this is not rocket science. Skills come through doing something over and over again, right? That's how we acquire all skills, and dry fire is kind of become this beast in our community that has become more and more popular and is almost its own industry in terms of the products that are available. It's this like whole niche thing. It's huge. But the reason for that, like the reason dry fire is a thing, is because practice is a thing. And practice with a gun is hard. It's expensive. It also is inconvenient. We got to get in a car and drive somewhere. We got to have targets. We got to pay range fees or a range membership. Like it's not like trying to build skills with riding your bike. Like, you just get on the bike and go right around. Like it's not like trying to get good at a sport. Like you want to get good at basketball, you buy a crappy little hoop, you put it in your driveway, and you shoot hoops all the time. You want to get good at playing the piano? Like you sit at the piano and you play it all the time. But unfortunately, shooting a gun is not like that. It's just not an option we have. I can't just like grab my gun and go do some shooting in the basement right now. Like it's not going to happen, right? It's dangerous. It's expensive. It's inconvenient. So dry fire is that thing that's become this massive beast because it's about getting the skills without that pain, without the cost or the danger or the inconvenience or all those things. It's just like it's just our way of saying like practice without the pain, without the expense, and without the inconvenience. Just unload the gun and do stuff.
Yeah, and the entire goal here is to attain a level of skill that you can complete your entire manipulation of your weapon, your whole manual of arms without thinking or looking at your weapon. I think one of the important concepts here is that if you have to think about your gun and how to reload it or how to get it to work, then you're not going to be looking at the danger that's up and working, and you're not going to be problem solving. If you've got somebody who's trying to load a magazine and can't figure out how to get it in there because the bullets aren't facing the right direction, they're going to be down here screwing around with their pistol when there's bad guys and bullets flying around. Whereas somebody who knows what they're doing with that weapon has it loaded and back up and ready to go back into the fight without having to think about it. And they're able to problem solve and see that threat coming and do a whole lot better when it comes to gunfighting because they don't have to think about how their weapon needs to run. They've already done it so many times they don't need to think about loading and unloading their weapon or how to shoot. They're just already doing it so that they're better able to problem solve on the battlefield. So I think that's something that a lot of people don't understand is why it's so important to learn that stuff. Because good tactics is important, but knowing how to manipulate your weapon without thinking about it frees up your brain to better problem solve in a very dangerous environment.
Yeah, that's good stuff. I'm going to take us on a little bit of a tangent here with where my brain's going, but yeah, I'm going to do it anyway. So I was thinking about this because we all, if we're being honest, everyone who's listening to this, we all have semi-unique personal reasons for deciding to make this a part of our lives. For some people, frankly, it is about the coolness of the toy. Like I just like guns because I like guns. Guns are cool. And so like that's my primary thing is like to know about guns and own more guns and trick out the guns. And that's cool. Like if that's the thing that you're passionate about in this world, that's fine. Some people are collectors. I like having old guns. I like knowing about old guns. I like going on the Reddit forum and seeing pictures of old guns and being able to say, oh, that's a such and such. That's cool. I picked up a rifle the other day at this guy's house. He wanted to show me. I've never seen that gun before in my life. I had to go Google it and like go through pictures to figure out what it was. So I'm not that guy. Some people, this is truly about self-defense. Like I am just legit concerned someone's going to try and hurt me or my loved ones one day, and I want to be ready. So my point is like we all have like these different like anchors that keep us involved here, that cause you to actually listen to this podcast at all, to take the time out of your busy life where you could be learning and doing any number of things and decide to listen to me and Brian talk. Like you have your own core anchor that anchors you to this community, to this industry, to this practice, to this thing we do, this idea of being an armed American, owning guns, potentially carrying them around and using them for self-defense. But like no matter where you're at on that spectrum, you have to justify, at least to some degree, to yourself, and certainly this is how I justify the whole kit and caboodle to me, that this is about living and dying. This is about dying, like staying alive in an emergency. And so that requires some minimum amount of proficiency. Maybe I don't need to be like Instagram Speedy Gonzalez, like maybe that's beyond what's necessary for me to be comfortable and competent. But I need some base minimum level of skill, and the only way I'm going to obtain that is through some degree of repetition.
Hmm.
Um, I This next week I'm going to Nashville, Tennessee. Well, outside of Nashville, I'm going to Mickey Shook's S12 event, and it's a 4-day training event. And I've been to it twice. Brian, you've been to it once. This will be my third time. And at an event like this, like where you're on the range basically all day for 4 days in a row, with minimal breaks, inevitably, without any instruction at all, you'll get better just because you spend 4 days running a gun. Like you're gonna knock off all the dust and rust. You're gonna just naturally figure some things out, and by the end of the 4 days, you're gonna be a way better shooter, even if you got no instruction at all. And that's one of those interesting things I find is it's like committing to take that class, going to that event. And I'm not going as a student this time. I have the other 2 times, but committing to do something like that just forces you to put in hours and repetition, which is the
Hmm.
next thing on this list. And I'm kind of transitioning to it a little bit here, Brian, but repetition, like just pure, raw, in whatever form it comes, repetition is how you become better at stuff. And sometimes that happens by me choosing to do certain things over and over again. Sometimes it happens by me choosing to go take a class or attend an event where I'm just going to be on the gun a lot, and that's inevitably going to lead to me getting better.
You got to have that 10,000 hours, right? I mean,
Oh yes.
you got to get that time in. You can't just pick up a gun and just start John Wick and stuff as much as you would love to think so. I think you got to get out. You just got to do it over and over and over again. And I tend to I used to get really frustrated at the repetition part, that I would just get bored with it. But something that I do now is I kind of view it more as like a meditative kind of a thing, losing myself in the process of doing it perfect every time. I think something that really helped me to get quick more, or to get better more quickly, was to perform every movement and then try to do it exactly perfect every single time. And I would start off very slowly, very, very, very slow, to make sure that I could go through every single step of the movement. And then once I understood that, I had memorized every step of the movement, then I would continue to work through that. And I would work all the way through that until I got it perfect every time. And then I would start to increase the speed, slowly. I would just get a little bit faster and a little bit faster and a little bit faster. And I think that really helped me with the whole, being bored when it came to doing the repetitive part of it. And then I just kind of get lost in the repetition of doing a thing over and over again. And this is not just the dry fire practice. Means going to the range as well. And it's kind of hard to hit that the range in a way that's going to be super beneficial for your training. You can practice your shooting, but you can't really train that effectively on a flat range, I would say. Especially if you're on a range where they don't allow you to, shoot from the holster, and then they only allow you to shoot one round a second, kind of a thing. So they'll limit you pretty substantially for good reason. There's a lot of knuckleheads that walk in there and think that they know what they're doing. They haven't been trained at all. And then they try to perform these movements without the proper training, and wind up shooting themselves. So that could be pretty detrimental for the ranges. But, finding a range or an instructor that will show you and guide you through how to do that is pretty important. There's a lot of different instructors out there that can help you with that, but sometimes it's always so beneficial to travel to an event. A lot of companies have various shooting events that you can attend, where you can, draw from the holster, shoot from weird, awkward positions, like Mickey's S12 event is, like a perfect example of that. I know he has a lot of shooting from weird positions, from the
Hmm.
ground or from your knees. You don't get a lot of time to do that. You don't want the first time you're trying to shoot from that position to be when you're doing it for real. right? We want to get out and try that stuff on the regular. And then part four of this is the repetition part. We got to do it over and over and over again, because that's when we're actually going to learn this, so that we carry it around in the back of our minds, so that way we don't have to think about it when it comes to that time for real. Then I can problem solve in real time, and I don't have to be worrying about my gear and how my gun is running, because my subconscious is already doing that for me.
Yeah. For a second, let me just relate this to fitness, personal fitness and health.
Ooh, that's a good one. Yeah.
Because like some people are motivated to work out because they like the way it makes them feel. I go to the gym or my home gym or whatever. I go out for a run or whatever your thing is, and I get done and I just feel good about myself. And that's all the motivation I need. Other people are like socially motivated. Like I need to have a partner. I need to go to the gym with another human so we can talk about life and things, and they can push me and I can push them. And that accountability is what helps me to achieve. Other people, it's like financial. It's like, well, I just need to go like pay for a personal trainer. Because if I have a personal trainer that I'm paying for, then I'm going to make sure I show up because I've spent that money and I don't want it to go to waste. And so, making that commitment to pay for it, or even like just a gym membership for some people, like I just don't want to waste my gym membership money. So that's why I go 3 times a week.
Hmm.
Other people, it's like, well, I want to be part of a movement. So I'm going to go be the P90X guy or the beach body build, whatever guy. Yeah, I think there's all these things that are part of that world. I know very little about, frankly. But so, I want to be part of that tribe. It's cool to be part of that tribe. And I want to be part of that tribe. All that is good. Like none of those are better or worse. I'm not trying to condemn any of those things that motivate anybody. I think that we're all just different. That's the point I'm trying to make.
Yeah.
And so this idea, like you, Brian, I find gross repetition with my gun grossly boring. Like I do. I think it's boring to just we were talking about this in a company meeting the other day with Riley. Riley's like, we were talking about the upcoming challenge, and Riley's like, well, I think they should just do this like 30 times a day for 3 days in a row. And I'm like, Riley, that probably is very practical, but it's brutal lame. Like it's just so stinking boring. No one wants to do that, man.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, and I'm like, yeah, like we're not all Riley. Like most of us are not Riley. We can't just like do this boring crap day in, day out for weeks at a time so that we can be like, check it. I just shaved like 3 seconds off my target transitions at 45 degrees. Like that's just too boring. Like make it more interesting, which is another shameless plug for the 21-day challenge. If you haven't done it yet, you're not listening. Go to concealedcarry.com/challenge. Check it out. It's going to be awesome. I promise it won't be boring because we didn't let Riley make it boring. Okay. It's going to be really cool. So yes, like figure out what motivates you is the point and do what's necessary to shake that up. And for me, like, that's why I'm let me be transparent. I do not conduct regular dry fire like I should. I don't like, it's not like 3 days a week, every Monday at, when I put the kids to bed, I do like, I just not that guy. I do some dry fire here and there because it's important to me to focus on certain skills. So I'll be like, you know what, I really suck at recoil management. So I'm going to go work on that today for 30 minutes. And then I might come back to it again next week.
I'm not that guy. That's why I would like to be that guy. Like I admire those guys. That's why I like the 21-day challenges, because like that's why I'm going to do it, is because I want that to be a part of my identity. Like I want to be a guy who does that, and I'm not a guy who does that, and I want to make that a thing. So I agree with that.
Yeah, exactly. Well said. So like if you're just the kind of person that's self-motivated, great. If you're not, I'll tell you what, for 21 days. Just for 3 weeks, commit to being part of it, and let's see what that does to you. Like I promise, the benefits are going to be enormous. It'll be crazy good. You might walk out of it and even say, "Crap, I could do this. I could keep going every day." Or you might walk out of it and say, "You know what? I'm going to commit to keep doing this stuff 2 days a week." I don't know, but you're going to have guided, specific direction in a community environment every day for 21 days. I'm stoked about that because that I can commit to. Like you want me to go like join a gym and work out every day? Yeah, maybe not. But I'm the guy who's like raising my hand. It's like, I got this program that'll get you to do 100 push-ups in 100 days. I'm like, ooh, yeah, that sounds cool. I want to be able to do 100 push-ups. On day 101 though, I'm like, I'm out. So like, I'm just being transparent and honest about myself and how I work. And so that's one of the reasons we're doing this 21-day challenge, because we think anyone can commit to doing stuff for 10 minutes a day for 21 days, and it will have massive impact on their skills. So
Yeah. And
yeah.
what kind of things do you think people were going to need to repeat for this repetition? Like, what are sort of some of the things that they're going to need to have on these repetitions?
Yeah. So, well, there's like this really like practical, boring answer, and then there's like the way you actually achieve that to not make it boring. But the practical reality is you need to, like, 1 billion times, you need to retrieve a gun from a holster, present it to target, and press the trigger in a way that's a quality trigger press, and do that as fast as possible. That is like the ultimate skill in civilian gunfighting. It really
Probably the
is.
most important, right? Like,
Yeah,
because I was just thinking, like, well, you also need to work on reloads. It's like, well, I mean, not really. Like your
not really.
reloads, yeah, you
Yeah.
don't really need to work
If
on
I want to
reloads.
be a USPSA grandmaster, I need to work on reloads, right? But if I just want to be an effective civilian defender, like, that's something I should be competent with for a number of reasons, primarily so that I can attend quality training and build the other skills. But it's probably not like the most critical thing. Like, the thing you actually need massive repetition on is get the gun into the fight and get good shots on target extremely fast.
Yeah.
That's the real civilian skill. And like, how does Dave Spalding says it? Dave Spalding says something like the number one most important skill, or I think he says the person who gets their gun into the fight first wins. You know,
Hmm.
John Correa has another way of saying it. He says the person who gets shots on the meaty bits of the other human first wins.
The meaty
Like,
bits.
I think I'm quoting him verbatim. I could be butchering it, but I'm pretty sure that's how he says it. The meaty bits.
Yeah, that sounds like John Korea.
So the takeaway from these people, yeah, like Dave Spalding is the original, like, professor of studying gunfights. The guy made it like this before the days of YouTube. Dave Spalding was the guy who was like hunting down stories of gunfights from cops, asking them for details of what happened and analyzing it and cataloging it. The guy is a professor of how real gunfights go down. And John Correa is kind of, a modern YouTube equivalent of that. But both of them understand these are people who have studied more gunfights than you and I can possibly wrap our minds around. And they both make it very clear that the most critical defining metric of you winning a gunfight as a civilian is getting the gun into the fight as fast as possible and getting accurate shots on the meaty bits of the other person as quickly as possible. Now, that sounds boring though if that's all I do. So how do I make that not boring? Well, a couple things. One is I break it into parts. So, for example, like, we call these micro drills. So I might just practice doing nothing more than clearing my garment and getting my hand on the gun. Clear garment, get hand on gun. Clear garment, get hand on gun. Like, that's a micro drill that I'm not even removing the gun from the holster, but I'm getting really proficient at just clearing my garment and acquiring the grip. Clearing the garment, acquiring the grip. But that's going to get boring, right? So then what do? Well, then I start from the gun already out, presented to target, and I just practice trigger press without disturbing the sights. Reset again, trigger press without disturbing the sights. Reset, do it again. I can do that for a while. That's going to get boring. So then what do? Well, then I do something that's just about target presentation. Where I start with the gun on the hand, then I just push it out to target, and I see how I did. And then I do it with my eyes closed, and then I open them and see how I did. Right, natural point of aim. And then I do a thing where I work in cover, right, where I start here and then I step out and I do this. And so these other elements are really, frankly, to make it dynamic and fun and engaging and interesting, and to build some good habits along the way. But if we're really coming down to it, and obviously I have strong feelings about this, and you opened the can, so everybody now has to listen to me rave about it a little bit. At the end of the day, what it really is going to come down to is your ability to get the gun on target and get good shots as fast as humanly possible.
Hmm. Yep, I love those ideas on how to make things a little less boring. I think something that I do also, while I try to do some a little workout when I do my dry fire practice. So that way I'm focusing on a lot of the basics like my trigger control, my sight alignment, my grip, my presentation, all that kind of stuff. But I also like to throw in a little bit of a workout on top of it. One of the most important things is, being able to get up and off of the ground. I heard or read a study that said that there was a direct correlation between someone's ability to get up off of the ground and how long that they were, um, the longevity of their life, like
Hmm.
how physically fit they were for a long period of time, could be directly linked back to how well you could get up and down off of the ground. And I know for myself, through my various phases of my physical fitness, being able to get up and up off the ground is, something that I hold a significant amount of weight to, especially if you've got a gun in your hand. If you can get up off the ground, with a weapon in your hand and not using your other hands, that's a decent skill to have. If you ever get knocked on your butt or you get thrown someplace, you're not going to be at such a detriment. And then when it comes to being able to shoot from um, compromised positions, you're going to be up and down and trying to maneuver much more effectively. One of the most important things that you could do for your self defense, and not just being a better shooter, but is just your physical fitness. You will be a better shooter if you have better muscle tone, and your heart is healthier. Like all over, you are going to be a better defender. But on top of that, it gives you the best tool for self defense, which is running away. I think
Yeah.
running away is a totally underrated defense tactic. Guns are good to have and all that kind of stuff, but if I've got the opportunity, I'm just going to book it. I'm just going to bail on this situation and try to get outside of it so that it's not so dangerous to me. And if I don't have the physical fitness to remove myself from that situation, or to pull myself over a fence or a wall, or to carry a loved one to safety, then I'm not really focusing on the right things. So
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
part of the repetition is also, making sure your physical fitness is kind of worked into that in some way, and it helps to make it a little less boring for me personally.
Yeah, there's also just the simplest argument to me, which is the whole point of being a self-defender is so no one kills me. Well, that doesn't help me if my health kills me early.
Yeah, if you kill
So,
yourself.
yeah, if the objective is to like live, then I increase my life by focusing on my health and fitness. But
Yeah.
yeah, like, and part of that can be part of that fun practice. Like, I love doing dry fire practices and drills where I put on I get a go signal and I put on a tourniquet and then I press the shot off after the tourniquet's on and I check my time. Like, it's about mixing it up. Or like you said, a drill. Like I'll do a drill where I start on the ground on my back, right on my back, and I get to give myself the go signal, draw the gun, engage the target, and then I go to one knee. Or excuse me, so I start on my back, engage the target, roll to one side, engage the target, roll to the other side, engage the target, come back to my back, engage the target, come up into a seated position, engage the target, go to one knee, engage the target, stand up, engage the target,
Hmm.
start over. So it's going to take several shots. If you have a striker fired gun, this is going to be difficult. This is a good example of a time to use a Glocky trainer on my Glock, or to have a resetting trigger like a SIRT pistol or airsoft gun or cool fire trainer, something that's allowing me to actually press the trigger. But even if I didn't, if I had none of that stuff, it's still just the exercise of pretending to press the trigger would be sufficient, because it's about me being able to. I'm acquiring sight. How many times I'm redoing my target presentation? How many times? I'm also learning how to stabilize my shot in all those positions, and I'm getting great physical exercise. So yes, like, you can combine things to make it interesting.
Hmm. Yeah, that's exactly what I do too. I start off on the ground and I go all the way from laying down to standing up with my pistol or my rifle or whatever it is that I'm doing. And I try to not touch the floor with extra hands. And it takes a little bit of extra effort. Like, you have to kind of think your way through how your movements are going to look. There's an excellent YouTube video on this by Instructor Z. You remember him from S12, right, Jacob?
Yeah, Z Durham,
Yeah,
yeah.
ZE. Yep. Yeah, he's an excellent instructor, and he has a video on YouTube that talks about how to get up and down off of the ground using good movement techniques that he learned from jujitsu. So it's an excellent. It walks you through every single step of how to get down and up off of the ground when you have a weapon. And if you just incorporate that into your concealed carry and you put a little intensity behind it, you got yourself a little workout.
Yeah.
Where you're also practicing your weapon stuff. You're getting up, down, and up and off the ground. You're getting a little bit of extra fitness and exercise. You don't have to do too much, 10, 15 minutes, wouldn't be that bad for you. And that could be a good option for you.
Yeah. Aziz, great dude, great instructor, former Green Beret too, if I recall.
Mm-hmm.
So those Army guys, they're not too bad. The takeaway here is figure out your way to get repetition. Figure out like how to make it fun. Maybe it is social for you. Maybe it's about going to the range with some buddies or being part of this 21-day challenge, which I think has some social aspects to it. But figuring it out. Yeah. What's the last one? We got 5 here. Brian, what's our number 5?
Last one, then we're wrapping up. Last one is re-educate. So essentially, this starts the cycle all over again. You're going to re-educate yourself because you're going to go back into step number 1, which is your gear procurement. After you have already worked your way through this whole cycle, you're going to know a lot more, and your gear is going to change. It's not just that maybe you bought the top of the line, best possible gear that you could possibly get, but as you've gone through this whole course of learning how to shoot, it doesn't work for your particular style. Maybe you started off with an appendix holster, and as you went through all of your education process, now you're in the process of maybe I need a 3 o'clock holster. Or something different for your particular situation. So this is where number 5 is your re-educate. You're just going to go back down through this list with everything that you already know, and then you're just going to work on it gradually as you go. And this is just an ongoing process. You'll never know everything, and there will always be new things to learn. One of my favorite things to impress on my new students is to never miss an opportunity to practice the basics or to relearn the basics again. I have been through maybe 100. I was going to say 1,000. That's a little much, but I would say I might be closing in on 100 basic pistol classes that I've taken over and over and over again. And every new time that I take a pistol class, I never pass up an opportunity. If someone's teaching a basic pistol class and I can take that class, I'll retake it. One, because I know this stuff pretty well already, and I can understand, and I want to learn it from a new instructor. Pretty often I'll have instructors that will repeat the same types of information. They'll even repeat it the same way, but there will always be a few different circumstances where the instructor will present the same material, but in a slightly different way that resonates with me in a different way. And so I learn new things from these instructors, even though they're teaching me something that I am already very well studied on. So I think that's an excellent thing, is to continue to rework those basics. A lot of times they say the experts are just they have a deep understanding of the basics, is what an expert is. And so if you can go through and relearn those basics of concealed carry, self-defense, and weapon manipulation, then you will 100% constantly get better if you just work on those basics. And then you go find yourself an instructor who teaches you little tips and tricks for tweaking those basics so that you're even better. And I think that's kind of the general philosophy for how to approach the training cycle.
Yeah. Good stuff. I like that. I think that this idea of, it's interesting because on one hand, I think what we're trying to say, we have this list of 5 things, these actionable things we've talked about today. On one hand, I think we're saying, like, kind of think of them like a cycle, like we're like a loop, that we're looping through, and kind of, okay, like gear procurement, education, dry fire, repetition, re-educate, go again, go back. And I think it reminds me a lot, in fact, of kind of the March acronym, right, in the medical world, where it's like, as soon as we get done checking everything on the injured casualty, we reassess. All right, let's go back and recheck. As soon as we finish, guess what we're gonna do? We're gonna recheck them again. Like it's just gonna do that over and over again. And I think that like that's really deep in that philosophy and that concept and that training. So like that's kind of like this. Like we're just okay, now we're gonna do it again. So in one way, it kind of feels like this loop, this repeatable loop. But there's also this reality that it's not sequential. It's not like you do this and then this and then this and then this. I think it's sort of the sense of like, well, I'm doing all these things all the time. We're just trying to give you some actionable steps so that you can say, well, is there something I'm neglecting or I'm not doing well among these things? Or that I've kind of checked off, said, I've done that, I've moved on. Well, maybe we need to go back and we need to do that again or do that better. And so I think these are 5 things that for me are like always important. Like I should always be doing all 5 of these things all the time. And I think that's the way I think of it. Less of a loop and more of like an ongoing checklist. Like do I have all 5 of these balls in the air? Am I juggling them well, or have I set one down?
Hmm. Yeah, and in an ideal world, I'm working on my dry fire practice. I wake up in the early in the morning. I drink some water. I go for a workout. I come home. I practice my dry fire. I start my day. That would be an ideal world.
Right, right, right. Well, good stuff, folks. We're coming up on about an hour. For those who are still listening, let me just reiterate once again. You really need to get involved in our 21-day challenge that's coming up. This challenge, to be clear, let me give you kind of the timeline. Right now, this is November. When you're listening to this, hopefully it's November. This is getting recorded and will be published in November 2024. So now is the time to get signed up and get logged in, because you're going to want to get familiar with the interface. There's some things you can do right now already to earn some points to put you on the leaderboard, including there's a target that you're going to need to download. This target's a free target. You'll download it. You'll print it on normal printer paper at your house that we're going to be using for a lot of the exercises during this 21 days. So now is the time to get logged in, get signed up, etc. And then December 1st, that's the first day of the challenge. That's day 1. That's go time. And the challenge will run December 1st through December 21st. On each of those 21 days, you're going to have a 10-minute or less exercise to do at home, 100% all dry. There's no go to the range stuff. There is some stuff we want you to look at in terms of benchmarking your performance before and after the 21 days. There's lots of different ways to do that. That doesn't necessarily require going to the range either, though it's probably advisable. But during the 21 days, it's 100% dry fire, 10 minutes or less each day at home, and very much so guided, very deliberate and clear as to what you're going to be doing during each of those 21 days. There's also educational videos that are going to be provided. Those are mostly not coming from our team. In fact, we're procuring that content from experts all around our industry that you're going to be encouraged to watch each day. And by encouraged, I just mean that's part of the experience. There's going to be a group community thing where you're going to be sharing with others, and all these activities and tasks we're talking about will earn you points, and the points are necessary because a minimum number of points achieved will mean you've completed the challenge and you earn a cool prize at the end. More details on that to come, but I'm super excited. I'm super pumped. I'm doing it. Like I am committed. I will do the challenge. I'm going to do the exercises myself every day for the 21 days. I'll be logging that. I'll be sharing it with others. It's all going to happen starting December 1st, but you need to get signed up and get logged in now. So go to concealedcarry.com/challenge. And remember, as a listener of the podcast, you can get a 10% off discount by putting in podcast21 as a coupon code. And if you're a Guardian Nation member, by the way, you get 50% off. So if you're a Guardian Nation member and a podcast listener, crap, that's 60% off. You have no excuses. You better get on that. Brian, anything else you want to add before we wrap her up?
Nope. I think that squares it away. Get out there, get training, do your dry fire practice, participate in the 21-day challenge, and I think you will find yourself to become a better gunfighter.
Yes, sir. Well, there you have it, folks. Remember to train right, train often, and train safe so you can fight hard, fight fast, and fight true. Take care.